what is the actual purpose of goal setting? And we're going to use our characters here in a moment, but before we talk about anything specific, let's think about the purpose of goal setting. And I guess with goal setting, folks, we're sort of thinking here like we're trying to achieve something with our sporting or athletic performance. Well, within that, if we set goals, what's the purpose of these things? It's fairly obvious, but let's just put a couple of critical points in. It really helps with what we refer to as adherence. No, this is not you getting stuck to a bit of sellotape. This is adherence to training, or sticking to training might be a nice way of putting this. Adherence to training and exercise, okay? So we set goals because we don't want to get lazy and give up. It maintains that kind of motivation. And that specifically is my second point. It motivates, okay? It motivates. So it's not just about avoiding failure by avoiding giving up, and it's about that adherence, and it's about motivating performers, okay? So it motivates performers. Wonderful. And finally, my third point in terms of the purpose before we get into our SMART process, it will also improve performance. Okay, and we might want to use the word here, improve or optimize. Optimize is a nice word for you to use in various contexts, actually, but it means getting the most out of, the best out of something. Optimizing performance. So whatever kind of capacities or talents an individual has, we get the most out of them by having really well set goals, and those goals being adhered to and being used for motivational purposes. Now, of course, I think we all know what's coming here. We like to use the SMART methodology, okay? So I'm going to try and I'm not a big fan generally of teaching from acronyms, because I think they're just like how to remember something, but in this case it's kind of useful. We've got our SMART principle of what goals should be a bit like. I haven't really done this very well, and undoubtedly not going to refine these correct colours again, but let's think about that. Watch that from right now. So the S of SMART refers to what we refer to, well, that might be right, as specific. Goals or targets must be specific. So for example, let's take our gymnast. He or she may set a specific goal, which is measurable, we'll come to in a second, in relation to flexibility at the back, at the hips, in the shoulders, for example. It might be a specific target for that particular outcome. Why? Because it's directly related to performance. So think about specific as it could relate to what we call the COF, or the component of fitness. It could relate to flexibility for the gymnast. Maybe it could relate to stamina for the footballer, for speed for the sprinter in the 3 images I've got. It could relate to the individual sport, so our goals must be specific to our sport. They could be specific to our position in our sport. Think about the difference between the need for things like agility and reaction time in goalkeepers, say, compared to in defenders, for example. I mean, they're kind of both need both, but goalkeepers need them a lot more, okay? So that might be an interesting one. And the other one is we might think about it in relation to an area of the body. And I mentioned that earlier because I talked about the flexibility of our gymnast shoulders, for example. We're being specific. Now, let's think about measurable. What do we mean? The M. What do we mean? We're talking about a goal being measurable. And I think if you were to pick out one, this is probably the most critical one, right? Goals and targets in sport, they must be objective. And what do we mean by that? They must have a measure, a number, a ratio associated to them. Therefore, whether we are successful or not is literally a binary. Yes, we achieved the goal. No, we didn't achieve the goal. So think about something like a percentage improvement on a fitness test result, say, or we might be improving a score or a percentage, or it could be something like an improvement. So let me just throw you a couple of examples. Let's take our sprinter. What about if let's take our sprinter here. What about if they achieved, if they were aiming to achieve a 6% increase on their sergeant jump, their vertical jump test score over 6 weeks. That therefore becomes measurable, and that person can work towards it. It's a power reading, which of course would be relevant to our sprinter. Let's think about the A. When we talk about A, we are talking about the goal being achievable. Okay, so it's got to be realistic. So let's put that in there. We're not going to say we want a 70% increase on that sergeant jump or vertical jump test, because it wouldn't be achievable. It wouldn't be real. But the goal must be challenging. We also don't want to make goals like super easy. It's got to be, I sometimes refer to it as just at arm's length, just reachable. That's what we're looking for with our goals. And that's what makes goals meaningful. Guys, you will know, whether it's your studies or anything you do really, if someone says to you, do something which you can already do, it's like pretty uninteresting, right? Or, there's those things where I don't want to sort of say anything silly, but you might get given that worksheet that's targeted at a grade 4. You're like, oh crikey, this is, I can do this in my sleep, for example. It's not particularly meaningful in that sense. We want goals to be challenging but in reach. Now then, last thing on achievable, that will vary from individual to individual. So I just wanted to make that point. What's achievable for one may be slightly different, obviously, to another. Now, let's talk about, I'm not sure what colour that is. Let's talk about the R. And with the R, that was definitely not that colour. With the R, we're talking about the goal being recorded. What do we mean by this? Well, the goal becomes official. It becomes agreed between the people involved in the goal. Let's say athlete and coach. We might stick it on the wall in the changing rooms, for example, or in the corridor. And it must be agreed with the coach or trainer. It must be agreed with the coach, okay? So that's what we mean by recorded. It goes down on a planning document, or it goes on the wall, or it's recorded in our diary. It has to have that sort of feel to it. Okay, and finally, guys, if I just drag you down for this last one, in terms of the T, okay, what we mean by this is it must be timed. Sometimes you see this as time phased or time bound. There's got to be an end point. What do we mean by that? Well, let me write down for you. It's a time bound goal. And I mean that it doesn't go on forever. We are trying to achieve it by a certain point. It must be within reach. Setting goals for people which are 2, 3, 4 years away, it's not particularly motivating, because it doesn't feel like it's ever going to come round, right? So we find with athletes, it's often, not always by the way, it's often goals which are 4 to 12 weeks in length. Okay, now if you think about 4 weeks, a month away, that kind of goal, if you're looking to, let's take the 6% improvement in the vertical jump test score in 4 weeks, that would be quite challenging, right? I suppose it depends on what your start point is, but we want to make our goals specific to the performer, to the position, the sport, the component of fitness. We want to make them measurable, a percentage improvement, a personal best, a score. We want to make them achievable, within reach, but challenging. We want to record them, agreed with the coach, goes in a diary or goes on the wall, something like that. And it must be time phased, okay? So it's within reach, the time that is, and it's often sort of in a 4 to 12 week period. Now, we will go into more detail on that in other aspects of our studies in PE, but for now, that's good.